Welcome, bienvenidos to Pennington Publishing, your source for assessment-based English language arts in response to intervention reading instruction featuring Common Core aligned curriculum written by teachers for teachers.
Training Module 2, Language Conventions Lessons, Standards 1 and 2. The Teacher's Guide provides 56 language conventions lessons in both print and digital formats. Each lesson introduces or reinforces Standards 1 and 2 of the Common Core Language Strand. These twice per week interactive lessons take about 25 minutes to complete. Every lesson builds upon the preceding lesson and focuses on one mechanic skill and one grammar and usage concept, with definitions, explanations, examples, practice, sentence diagrams, and answers. Teachers use mentor texts and writing applications to help students apply the mechanics and grammar and usage lessons in the reading and writing contexts. The accompanying student workbook provides the text of each lesson and room to take notes. Students practice the language conventions lesson components in their student workbooks as the teacher works through the lesson. At the end of the lesson, students complete and self-correct a short formative assessment. The workbook serves as a ready-made study guide for unit tests and the student's personal language handbook. All of the scripted language conventions, directions, and procedures are the same for each lesson. Once practiced, no advanced preparation is necessary. Just open the Teacher's Guide to the next lesson, tell students to get out their workbooks and find the lesson, turn on the projector, and teach. Students appreciate the consistent instructional procedures and the use of the same academic language throughout the program. Using the Teaching the Language Strand programs across grade levels provides the instructional continuity that students need to succeed. Let's practice a sample lesson together to get comfortable with the instructional procedures before teaching your first language conventions lesson to your students. Introduce the mechanics lesson by reading the scripted first paragraph. In this paragraph, the teacher briefly explains any key terms, provides a learning context, and reviews to help students access prior knowledge and prepare for the lesson. Here are the scripted directions. Today we are studying how to use apostrophes with compound subject and object possessives. Remember that compound subjects or objects are made up of two or more words describing one noun. Compound nouns are frequently hyphenated, for example, son-in-law, or appear in phrases, for example, tennis shoes. Also remember that an apostrophe is used before an S to show individual possession, for example, Linda's pen. Now let's read the mechanics lesson, highlight or underline the key points of the text, and study the examples. Ask students to read the mechanics lesson quietly in their workbooks as you read it out loud. If each noun in a compound subject or object has individual possession, place an apostrophe then an S at the end of each noun. If both or all of the nouns share ownership, place an apostrophe then an S at the end of the last noun listed. Reread the lesson and highlight or underline the key points of the text on the board or computer. Direct students to do the same in their workbooks as you read together. If each noun in a compound subject or object has individual possession, place an apostrophe then an S at the end of each noun. If both or all of the nouns share ownership, place an apostrophe, then an S at the end of the last noun listed. Now read and explain the examples of this mechanics rule. Examples: Eric's and Victor's backpacks, Kayla and Emma's pizza. Both Eric and Victor have their own backpacks, so an apostrophe S is needed for each individual possessive. Kayla and Emma share ownership of the pizza, so the apostrophe S is placed at the end of the last noun listed. At this point, tell students to now read the practice sentence in your workbook. Apply the mechanics rules to highlight or underline what is right, then cross out and revise what is wrong. Allow time for students to complete the practice sentence. Now call on students to share how they mark the practice sentence in their workbooks. Ask students, can anyone share what is right? When students share correct responses, highlight or underline those words and punctuation on the board or display. Then ask, what is wrong? And revise using deletions and insertions. Follow the same procedures for the grammar and usage lesson. Read the scripted first paragraph. Today we are studying how to use more than one adverb in a sentence. Remember that an adverb modifies a verb, adjective, or another adverb and answers the questions what degree, how, when, or where. Words ending in ly are often adverbs. Now let's read the grammar and usage lesson, highlight or underline the key points of the text, and study the examples. Ask students to read the grammar and usage lesson quietly in their workbooks as you read it out loud. When using more than one adverb in a sentence, follow this adverb order: what degree, how, where, when. Reread the lesson and highlight or underline the key points of the text on the board or display. Direct students to do the same in their workbooks as you read together. Now read and explain the examples. Example: she sings more enthusiastically on the stage year after year. More answers the question what degree. Enthusiastically answers how. On the stage answers where. And year after year answers when. At this point, tell students to now read the practice sentence in your workbook. Apply the grammar and usage lesson to highlight or underline what is right, then cross out and revise what is wrong. Allow time for students to complete their practice sentences. Now call on students to share how they mark the practice sentence in their workbooks. Ask students, can anyone share what is right? When students share correct responses, highlight or underline those words and punctuation on the board or display. Then ask what is wrong, and revise using deletions and insertions. The next lesson component is simple sentence diagramming. If the teacher and/or students are unfamiliar with sentence diagramming, it makes sense to pre-teach the 3 15-minute lessons found at the beginning of the language conventions section prior to teaching the first lesson. Now click pause if you want to skim these sentence diagramming pre-teaching lessons. Then press play when ready to continue. Ask students to read the sentence diagram directions quietly as you read them out loud. An adverb is placed below the part of speech it modifies in sentence diagrams. Add these adverbs to the sentence diagram in your workbook, silently and almost. Direct students to complete the sentence diagram in their workbooks. Notice how the student workbook requires students to fill in the blank or blanks with answers to practice the concept focus of the grammar and usage lesson. Students don't draw the sentence diagrams. When students have finished, display the sentence diagram answers. Direct students to compare your diagram to that on the display. Use a different color pen or pencil to mark a check mark above each correctly placed answer and revise any errors. Now display the mentor text and read the mentor text lesson script out loud, saying, "This mentor text, written by Cicero, a famous Roman orator, uses adverbs to develop rhythm in his speech." Let's read it carefully. "A man who thoroughly understands his subject speaks well everywhere and always." Which exceptional writing features can you identify? Discuss how the text serves as an exemplary application of the grammar and usage lesson. The adverbs thoroughly, well, everywhere, and always are placed in proper adverb order and build a rhythm to the sentence. Now read the writing application lesson script and direct students to apply what they have learned to write an exemplary sentence or two in their workbooks. These are the directions. Now let's apply what we've learned and compose a sentence with two types of adverbs on the writing application section of your workbook. Allow time for students to complete their writing application. Then ask a few students to share, and finally write one exemplary sentence on the display. Next, tell students to write the mechanics and grammar and usage sentence dictations in their workbooks. The sentence dictations serve as the formative assessment for the language conventions lesson. Turn off the projector or hide the sentence dictations from view. Make sure to dictate exactly what is written. Repeat as necessary, and remind your students to reference the lessons and examples as they write the dictations in their workbooks. These are the directions. Apply the mechanics lesson to write these sentences correctly. When we last visited my mother-in-law's, we took her to Joe and Bonnie's restaurant. Joe's and Bonnie's jobs were quite different. Repeat the sentences so that students will have an opportunity to think through their answers and use the lessons to guide their responses. Now apply the grammar and usage lesson to write this sentence dictation, placing adverbs appropriately. In her office, she cautiously opened the package that afternoon. Again, provide adequate time for students to complete their sentence dictations. Then tell students, now compare your answers to the dictations on the display. Use a different color pen or pencil to mark a check mark above correct answers or revisions. Correct errors with editing marks. Remind students that they can earn back credit for proper error correction. Tell students to total their check marks and record those scores in their workbooks. Teachers can apply their own point systems or simply assign a participation grade for each of the Language Conventions lessons. Collect the student workbooks following each unit test to assign credit.